Alright, welcome to our handstand push-up progression. Today we're going to be taking over you guys through going from all the way from a horizontal push, i.e. the push-up, all the way to a vertical press, the handstand push-up. Now we're showing you how we want you to progress through these, going through different rep schemes and ranges and how to program them into your workouts, troubleshooting, modifications, and going through mobility. How will this be programmed? So for our standard classes at CrossFit South Bend, we'll be programming them in once a week. How they will fit into the once a week schedule is as such. They'll be coming in on every week. Week 1 being our low rep. Low rep days, and then the next week 2 will be our high rep days. So this is going to be an ever flowing cycle. So week 1, low rep, week 2, high rep, week 1, back to your low rep days. So we'll be programming this once a week, usually as extra credit for all of our members. Now, if you want to follow this program on your own, what you're going to be doing is following over a 3-day template. If you want to do this more than just once a week, get more exposure to this, you really want to get your handstand push-ups. So what we're going to do is just follow a simple 3-day split. So starting first is going to be day 1. It's just going to be our low rep days. And day 2 will be high rep. And then day 3 will either be a skill pertaining to push-ups, handstand walking, handstands in general, something that's generally going to be non-exhaustive that's going to interfere with the high rep and low rep days, or you're just going to take the day off, do some mobility. So either skill or off day. So you're just going to flow through this. So if this is Monday will be low rep, Tuesday will be high rep, Wednesday will be off, and if you keep going, Thursday you come back to the low rep, Friday being high rep, Saturday being off, skill, mobility, etc., flowing that program through. Okay, now let's get into defining what we mean by low rep and high rep days. So our low rep, what we're going to do is ask you guys to find somewhere along our progression where you're going to be hitting the rep ranges of between 3 to 6 reps. Okay, that 3 to 6 rep range to allow us to get some more into the strength. Okay, now we're going to go into our high rep. So our high rep, we're going to ask you to find a progression that allows you to operate within the rep range of 10 to 16. Now this is going to allow you guys to get more into the muscular endurance side of things as opposed to strength, floating back and forth between these two, finding that balance. So for each day, high rep and low rep, you're going to be doing 3 sets of either high rep or low rep. So 3 sets of either low or 3 sets of high rep. Now, for this, each one, you're going to go through it, so you're going to rest around 2 to 3 minutes in between each set. So on your low days, you might get something that looks like this. Set 1, you get 5, you get 4 on your next set, and then maybe you get another 4 on that third and final set. Now on your high rep days, remember our high rep is going to be operating within the rep range of 10 to 16. So you might get something that looks like 13, 12, 10. And we're resting about 2 to 3 minutes in between those efforts. Now we prefer that you guys do these prior to your workout. Doing so is going to allow us to make sure you guys are in a fresh state, and muscle fatigue isn't going to interfere with our technical ability we're trying to chase after. As far as coming in here and warming up for these things, not going straight into it, after you've done some general warm-up, what we suggest you guys do is look at your progression where you're going to be doing that day, and then just rewind back 2 progressions and do some movements at that progression to get you ready for the progression that you're going to be doing that day. How to go about finding your appropriate progression to start off with, that initial setup of where to start. What we're going to recommend is you're going to find something along the progression that you can do somewhere in the mid to high range of either low rep or high reps. It allows you to operate at that higher end of that spectrum that we've set in. Also making sure that everything is technically sound. Okay, there's no flaw, no breakdown in movement. Make sure that progression allows you to do that. We also want to make sure that you guys know this is a long journey. This is a progression that's not going to be done in 3 to 6 weeks. I think this is a long endeavor. So making sure to start off conservative is going to be the way to go in the beginning. Now we're going to talk about when to progress on either on a high rep or low rep to the next progression in front of you. What we're going to suggest is when you guys are hitting the higher rep ranges of the progression for their high rep or low rep days, then you can think about considering and trying the next progression. For example, if we have our low rep day and you're hitting some sets in the neighborhood of 6, 6, 5, you're operating at the higher end of that spectrum for the low rep days. From here, we would recommend that you try the next progression and see if you can maintain the minimum buy-in for that progression of 3, 3, 3. Now, if you're unable to maintain that, maybe you go 3, 2, 1. You need to kick back to the previous progression, continue to pursue that progression at the given rep range, and then once you get more confident, get stronger, more technically sound at that progression, then go back and try the next progression. Same thing with high rep is when you're operating at the higher end of that threshold. That is going to look something like 16, 15, 15. So we're operating at 15s, 14s, 16s consistently on each set. That's when you can think about changing the next one. Once again, your minimum buy-in for the high rep range is going to be 10s across the board, just like the low rep. If you're unable to achieve 10s across the board, you need to go back to the progression that you were just on, and then from there, work on getting stronger, work on more technically sound. Once you become proficient at that one, then go ahead and try the next progression. So another option, if you're hitting the higher rep ranges and you move on to the next progression and you're unable to hit that minimum buy-in, let's use the high rep since we still have that up there. If you're unable to hit that minimum buy-in of 10, 10, 10, and you're hitting 16s on here, so you're hitting that higher rep range for all of those, you're nailing it, but you move on and you're unable to maintain 10s across the board. So maybe you get 10, 8, and you get 6. So you fall off. You're not working within our 10 to 16 rep range. The 6 that dropped you down into our strength category. What do you do now? You're already nailing this. Another option to do is to look at the progression and hit something that in between the progression that you're currently at and the progression that you need to move on to. So for example, our handstand push-up progression is going to eventually get your feet elevated in the box. You're on a 30-inch box, and your next progression is the 40-inch box. And you're able to hit a 40-inch box with the 10s across the board. Find that happen. Gymnastics programs such as our handstand push-up progression require a lot of mobility and strength. So at any time you're doing a progression and you're feeling pain, at any time you need to stop progression and either find a coach, help them identify why you're having that. Maybe it's because you're just getting out of position or you have some mobility issues. If mobility is true your limiting factor in this, allowing you to get in a good position, you should probably table this for a little bit and take this time to focus on addressing the mobility positions that are not allowing you to get into the proper positions that we want for this progression. Once you've taken care of your mobility issues, then you can hop back into progression and get back at it.
During this progression, do not allow the elbows to deviate outward during the pressing phase. The upper arm should remain parallel with the body. That is, the elbows should stay glued to the imaginary plane with your sides. Ignoring this and flaring the elbows emphasizes the chest and trapezius in the movement, making the movement substantially easier. And so this is more likely to happen if you are doing these movements while fatigued. If we flare out the elbows, we have no forward to backward stability, hindering the learning of any more advanced skills. Our focus is strength and balance here, so our training should reflect it. Remember, the best movements to build up to a movement we want to perform are those that mimic the position and motion at the primary movers as much as possible. It's also important to note the hollow body position must maintain throughout the entire movement during your progression in order to move to the next level. Handstand push-ups and their variations are built through proper position control and strength through the shoulders. When we arch, we also let the trapezius and pectorals become prime movers as the shoulder angle closes. This is a great way not only to emphasize incorrect neural patterns, but build general strength in the wrong muscles for the movement as well. To compound this, arching makes the body less aware of its position in space as tension is lost through the core and hips. Beginning the series on a squat rack with a barbell performing incline push-ups, note that we would prefer you use a power bar for these progressions. This is a perfect place to start to become aware of body position and elbow position. This is also a great place to get some warm-up repetitions in. You'll start at the 30-inch mark and work your way down to the 20-inch, then eventually the 10. Remember, you are only allowed to progress once you can perform all repetitions with the appropriate elbow and body positions. In the push-up, you'll start in a plank position with your hands flat on the ground, your elbows locked out, your shoulders right above your knuckles or at mid-hand, your body is in a neutral position, making a straight line from your head to your toes, your neck is neutral, your back is flat, your hips are neutral or in slight extension, your knees are in full extension, your ankles are pulled towards your face in dorsiflexion, with the balls of your feet supporting your body. Bend your elbows to initiate the descent, fighting to keep your elbows right on top of your wrists. If you look at Chad, his elbows do not flare in or out, they stay perpendicular to the ground. As you reach the ground, your head will remain in line with your global body position. Your forearms are perpendicular to your midline, and your body is completely straight. Allow your belly, hips, and thighs to touch the ground, but keep everything else except your feet off the ground. Initiate the ascent by pressing away from the ground, fighting to keep your elbows in the same vertical position as seen earlier. Finish in the full lockout, again adopting the plank position. Some general markers to set while working into the piked handstand push-up are to lay on the ground in a good push-up position and mark a little above the kneecaps and at the nose. This will be the position for your toes to walk up to and the top of your head to touch. The piked handstand push-up is the easiest variation in the handstand push-up series once inverted. In this movement, we're going to start on all four on our hands and feet. Walk your feet up, again, as close to the hands as you can, while putting as much weight on the hands as possible. Make sure to keep the legs straight. From here, dip your head toward the ground, keeping the torso vertical, and press back up. In this repetition, we're demonstrating a poor elbow position flaring out from the front. Try to avoid this as much as possible. The key to proper development of this movement is to really emphasize putting as much weight onto the hands as possible without toppling over, because we're trying to bias the strength to the anterior shoulders, upper chest, and triceps, which are the primary movers in the handstand push-up series. Keep the shoulder angle as open as possible. Think about reaching straight up towards the sky, but you're upside down. These 2 points are critical as they help simulate the further progressions of the handstand push-ups. While inverted, a good way to set a marker for your head to touch is to set a pad between your hands, right at the tip of your fingertips, and to try to avoid that pad as much as possible. Utilizing boxes of varying height, we use a 10-inch, 20-inch, and 30-inch. We can increase the bias of the weight onto the arms and the openness of the shoulder angle. From here, the execution is exactly like the regular headstand push-up. Bend the arms, with the elbows still welded to your sides, and control the descent to the ground. Press back up to where you started, and you have completed a box handstand push-up. In this movement, it's the tendency of the body is to keel over forward if we lack the strength in the shoulders or triceps. If you're slightly underbalanced, the body wants to push more weight back onto the feet to alleviate the weight on the arms. Allow neither of those to occur if at all possible. Also, do not allow the head to come out too much in this movement either. When the head comes out, the back tends to arch significantly. If this happens, the emphasis of the strength developed by this movement tends to move from the shoulders to a bit more of the chest. This is similar to moving from an incline press to an overhead press with the barbell. Resist the urge to let this fault occur in both this progression and subsequent progressions. Setting the stage for the handstand push-up up against the wall, you can either choose an approach of using the tripod position for a headstand or kicking up into the handstand first. For now, we will just show setting markers in the tripod to ensure proper hand placement, then using a kick up to get into the position. Notice the forearms when set are at a different angle. Once Chad moves the knees up to balance in the tripod, his forearms are now vertical. We've also skipped a few steps in the tripod position. When practicing the tripod, you can practice bringing the knees up to the elbows, maintaining balance, then extending from there. There are many progressions for handstand push-ups. For this progression, we're moving from the boxes against the wall with added pads on the ground to decrease range of motion. We would recommend once you have performed your technically sound box handstand push-ups for the appropriate amount of repetitions needed to move up a level, to transition to 2 to 3 mats on the floor, only taking a mat out once you perform the repetitions to our technical liking. Incorrect head placement at the bottom of the handstand push-up and back arching is typically a huge problem in handstand push-ups and is multifaceted. Fatigue is the biggest culprit. As we tire, it's tempting and almost natural to do what is necessary to bring in the other muscles to aid in the movement. When we let this happen, we build incorrect neural patterns and strength patterns that we are trying to avoid. From there, to make the movement more difficult, you can also add plates to form a deficit. Remember, body position is paramount here, and it's easy to want to progress faster and cheat the movement. Make sure you prioritize your mobility and quality of body position prior to the desire to move through this progression with speed.